Hello, my friend. Today we will once again explore and talk about the topic philosophy on women who don't post themselves on social media. Let's discover them together. There's a certain kind of woman you'll never completely solve. She doesn't flood her feed with selfies, doesn't broadcast her location, doesn't invite strangers into the most private corners of her life. She doesn't post herself. And yet, she's the one who stays in your thoughts long after the loud ones fade. There's something about her silence that weighs more than 1,000 filtered smiles. She moves like a trace of elegance through a digital wasteland. While everyone else performs, she watches. While others beg for validation, she quietly removes it. And here's the strange paradox. Her absence speaks louder than all their noise. Jean Baudrillard once warned that we live in an age of simulation, where the image replaces the real. Everything is displayed, not lived. Every post becomes proof that you exist. And in that theater of illusions, the woman who refuses to show herself becomes almost sacred. She resists the marketplace of exposure. She denies the camera the right to consume her. She refuses to be converted into a symbol others can manipulate, measure, and desire on command. In a world addicted to visibility, she becomes powerful precisely because she stays unseen. Most men misread that silence. They assume she's shy, modest, or uninterested. But what if her quiet isn't innocence? What if it's calculation? What if she already understands that the digital gaze doesn't create intimacy, it destroys it? She knows the moment she becomes visible, she becomes vulnerable to a world that devours mystery like entertainment. Baudrillard warned that modern life turns people into reflections of themselves, replicas of how they want to be perceived, not who they are. And the woman who doesn't post has escaped that mirror. She chooses to exist in reality while others chase the shadow of it. And here's the part most men don't see coming. Attention has become the new currency, and withholding it is the highest form of control. When she doesn't post, she isn't just protecting privacy, she's directing your imagination. She makes you wonder. You fill in the blanks she never wrote. You start craving what you can't access. That's the psychological alchemy of absence. The moment a woman becomes rare, she becomes valuable. The moment she withholds herself, she becomes unforgettable. But her silence can be both a virtue and a weapon. Sometimes it comes from wisdom. She's grounded, self-contained, uninterested in applause. Other times, it's strategy. She understands that mystery manipulates harder than beauty, that a man's mind isn't conquered by what he sees, but by what he can't. She doesn't chase influence, she lets curiosity do the seduction for her. You'll find yourself scrolling through endless noise, yet thinking about her, the one who never appears. And that's when Baudrillard's warning becomes clear. When everything visible loses meaning, only the invisible commands desire. So if you meet a woman who doesn't post herself, don't confuse her quiet with weakness. Study what her silence protects, her peace, her autonomy, or her power. Because in an age where exposure feels like survival, she chose rebellion. She doesn't exist for the algorithm, and that's exactly why she dominates it. Baudrillard believed the greatest illusion of the modern world is thinking visibility equals truth. The more people show, the less real they become. Everything turns into performance, a spectacle of validation. And when a woman refuses to play that game, she slips out of the matrix of simulation. She becomes untouchable because she no longer exists in the same dimension as those who depend on being seen to feel alive. Her absence isn't emptiness, it's armor. She walks through the digital crowd unseen, unmeasured, unowned. Men often underestimate the intelligence behind that disappearance. They think posting less is insecurity, but sometimes it's the sign of someone who has outgrown the need for digital mirrors. The woman who doesn't post herself is dangerous in the way depth always is. You can't study her through pixels. You can't predict her through patterns. She doesn't hand you the data to decode her. She withholds just enough to force you to confront your own projections, because what fills the space of her silence is your imagination, and that's where she holds the upper hand. Baudrillard once wrote that seduction is stronger than production, meaning mystery always beats exposure. When a woman reveals everything, she becomes content, consumed, scrolled, forgotten. But when she reveals nothing, she becomes a question that stays in your chest. Seduction, in its purest form, is the art of creating absence. It's the ability to evoke curiosity without surrendering substance. And the woman who doesn't post has mastered that art. She doesn't fight for attention. She makes attention fight for her. You'll notice something unsettling when you speak to women like this. They listen more than they talk. Their eyes feel anchored, like they're not distracted by performance, but rooted in the moment. They're not building an image, they're living a life, and that authenticity radiates in a way filters can't replicate. Men who've been conditioned to chase stimulation will feel uneasy around them because there's no easy entry point, no profile to stalk, no highlights to decode. You have to meet her as she is, not as she performs to be. And in a world full of masks, that's terrifying for most men. And here's where Baudrillard's warning gets sharper. He said when everything becomes visible, desire dies, because desire needs distance. It needs mystery, uncertainty, the ache of not knowing. That's why these women feel magnetic. Their silence restores that lost distance. Their restraint resurrects the forgotten art of longing. She doesn't feed your gaze, she starves it, until you realize your hunger is the only proof that she exists in your mind. That's the cruel genius of her psychology. She knows what every algorithm can't comprehend. Scarcity, not exposure, is the real engine of desire. So the next time you feel drawn to a woman who never posts herself, remember, you're not attracted to her content, you're captivated by her control. In a culture that sells transparency as virtue, she has chosen invisibility as strategy, and that makes her not just rare, but powerful. In Baudrillard's world, visibility is seduction's death. The moment something becomes fully seen, it loses its soul. The woman who doesn't post understands this intuitively, even if she's never read a page of philosophy. She knows mystery isn't just hiding, it's controlling revelation. The world has convinced everyone to expose themselves completely, trading privacy for attention and attention for validation. But she refuses that trade. She doesn't upload her face for algorithms to study, doesn't turn her body into public property. In that restraint, she becomes sovereign. She owns her image instead of letting her image own her. And men need to understand, the woman who doesn't post isn't automatically humble. She's often intentional. Her silence is her filter. Her invisibility is her power. She knows that when everyone else is busy broadcasting, the most desirable thing in the room is mystery. You can't screenshot her energy. You can't decode her life from a caption. She exists in experience, not in projection. And that difference unsettles shallow men because it demands presence. You can't stalk her. You have to meet her. You can't imagine her through curated highlights. You have to earn her reality. Baudrillard would say she has stepped outside the simulation. While other women chase the perfect digital self, she lives untouched by the gaze of strangers. Her beauty isn't constructed, it's remembered. Her confidence isn't recycled, it's quiet. There's no audience shaping her behavior, no invisible crowd feeding her feedback. She lives in first person while others watch themselves from a distance. And that's why she feels rare, because to live unobserved today is to live free. But here's where it gets complicated. Some of these women understand the economy of scarcity so well that they use it to dominate attention. They know absence multiplies value. They know curiosity can be weaponized. They don't post not because they're disconnected, but because they're calculating. Every silence, every vanishing act, every ounce of distance is deliberate. They understand what Baudrillard called the hyper-real. Power doesn't come from showing truth, it comes from controlling appearances. And by not appearing, she turns her lack of image into an image itself. She becomes an idea. And ideas are more seductive than bodies. Men fall for it. They confuse restraint with depth, silence with purity,
mystery with authenticity. Sometimes it's real, sometimes it's theater in a more elegant costume.
Because some women learn that silence is the most refined form of manipulation. When you reveal nothing, other people project everything. A man will fill her absence with fantasy. His mind will build stories in the vacuum she created. And once she controls your imagination, she barely needs to move. Now you're no longer seeing her, you're seeing your desire reflected back at you. That's Baudrillard's nightmare in real time. The simulation is complete. You think you found something real, but what you fell for was the illusion she permitted you to create. The woman who doesn't post might be hiding wisdom, or she might be hiding strategy. Either way, she's operating at a level most men don't even realize exists. That's why Baudrillard said, "Our era no longer deals in truth, only appearances." The more we try to display authenticity, the more artificial it becomes. And that's exactly why women who don't post themselves seem to hold a power others lost. They are not competing in the endless auction of validation. They're not offering themselves up for comparison, consumption, or commentary. They've stepped outside the arena where self-worth is calculated in likes. They've chosen scarcity over spectacle, and that choice makes people uncomfortable, especially men who've grown addicted to visibility as proof of sincerity. Because men often feel safest when they can see. They trust patterns, frequency, presence. A woman who posts gives him clues. A woman who doesn't gives him silence. And silence is unbearable to an insecure mind. It forces him to face his own projections. He starts asking, what is she hiding? Who is she with? Why doesn't she need to be seen? That uncertainty becomes fascination, and fascination becomes obsession. That's the psychology of control through absence. The less she gives, the more he invests. And the scary part is, he thinks he's choosing her, when really he's being guided by the hunger she created. Now, let's go deeper. Baudrillard's idea of the hyper-real is simple but brutal. In a world where everything is displayed, what disappears becomes divine. The invisible becomes holy. The woman who doesn't post elevates herself into that space. She becomes untouchable, mythic, a symbol rather than a participant. Every man thinks he understands her, but no one truly does. She has weaponized mystery in a time when everyone else is bankrupt of it. And that's what gives her influence. She's not competing for attention, she's commanding imagination. But this power can take two very different paths. One path is peace, the woman who values her inner life more than applause. She's anchored, secure, uninterested in performance. Her privacy is a garden where her mind grows without being trampled by judgment. She's the kind of woman who makes a man slow down, breathe, and rediscover depth. She reminds him that intimacy isn't broadcast, it's earned. She moves in a way that says, if you want access, show up as a real person. And for a man tired of endless stimulation, she can feel like water in a desert. The other path is darker. There are women who study desire like a science. They learn that scarcity manipulates. They vanish not out of serenity, but precision. They know the less they show, the harder men chase. They understand that withholding creates an emotional economy where curiosity turns into loyalty. She doesn't seduce by revealing, she seduces by disappearing. And Baudrillard warned about this. When illusion replaces reality, we stop loving people and start loving our idea of them. A woman who doesn't post herself can live freely or rule subtly. She might protect her soul from the market of attention, or she might profit from staying hidden inside it. Either way, she understands the currency of this century better than most men do.
Control the image, or the image controls you.
That's the truth buried beneath her silence, because in the end, the quiet woman online isn't defined by what she hides, she's defined by what she refuses to sell. Baudrillard warned that once everything becomes public, the private self dissolves. The woman who doesn't post resists that evaporation. Her refusal isn't just digital discipline, it's an existential statement. In a world that screams, "Show me who you are," she whispers, "You'll have to find out." And that single difference creates a new hierarchy. The loud ones collect attention, the silent ones collect control. She doesn't need to prove her happiness, beauty, or worth. She already knows it. That's why her presence feels heavy. Even when she's absent, she creates gravity. Most men won't understand this until they've already fallen into the trap of modern thinking, confusing transparency with truth. They'll assume the woman who posts constantly is real and the woman who doesn't is hiding something. But that's the conditioning talking. Sometimes the woman who hides her life is doing the most honest thing left in a dishonest world. Because when you live online, every moment becomes performance, every emotion becomes a brand. And she knows that to stay real, she must stay unseen. But there's an even deeper psychological layer men need to recognize. When a woman doesn't post, she reclaims the power of selection. She decides who gets to see her smile, who deserves her softness, who earns access to her time. She no longer lives under the dictatorship of the crowd's gaze. And when a man approaches her, he's stepping into territory that isn't public. There's no digital blueprint to follow, no curated gallery to pre-approve, no evidence to reassure him. He has to discover her in real time, through presence, patience, and perception. That's intimacy in its rawest form, the kind algorithms can't replicate. Baudrillard would call it the return of the real, the revival of what can't be digitized. And for men, this becomes a mirror. It exposes how dependent they've become on visible cues to feel in control. The woman who doesn't post denies him that comfort, forcing him to face his own insecurity. She makes him realize how much of his attraction depends on consumption. Without her pictures, he can't feed his curiosity on demand. He has to learn to connect instead of consume. He has to approach her like a human being, not a product. And that shift feels threatening to a man who's been trained by the system to equate access with safety. But not all silence is virtue. Some women understand perception so well that they orchestrate it. They stay invisible not to protect privacy, but to build desire. Their lives are curated in absence. They know the fewer details they give, the more desirable they appear. That's when invisibility becomes branding. And Baudrillard warned that this is the ultimate trap, when even hiding becomes performance. So men have to learn the difference. Is her silence peace, or is it a power play? Is she protecting her soul, or is she building an illusion to rule your mind? That's the question modern men rarely ask, because most men are too busy chasing the feelings she creates. Baudrillard's warning is that in a world where everyone performs, even authenticity can become an act. And the woman who doesn't post might be the only one who truly escapes the system, or she might be its smartest manipulator. Either way, she reveals a truth most people avoid. Visibility isn't freedom anymore. Invisibility is. Jean Baudrillard said that once an image takes over reality, people start mistaking representation for truth. That's where we are now, millions of digital selves chasing reflections of reflections, calling it life. But the woman who doesn't post rejects that mirror. She still remembers the difference between a life lived and a life displayed.
And that's precisely why she becomes the test every man must pass. Because here's the paradox. The more you crave her visibility, the more she controls you. She teaches you something you didn't realize you needed: patience, presence, the art of discovery without surveillance. When you meet a woman who keeps herself offline, she exposes how addicted you've become to proof, how fragile your confidence gets when you can't confirm what she's doing, where she's been, or who she's with.
That tension isn't automatically her manipulation. Sometimes it's simply your conditioning. The system trains you to equate access with reassurance. She breaks that spell by refusing to provide constant evidence. Baudrillard warned society would drown in signs and truth would vanish beneath infinite representations. She becomes the exception. Her silence reintroduces reality. She exists beyond display, and that makes her presence, when you finally earn it, feel almost unreal in the best way. You realize how rare it is to stand before someone whose existence hasn't been fragmented into pixels, someone whose soul hasn't been edited. And the moment you experience that, you start to see how hollow the constant performance has become. You start to recognize how much of what you call connection is actually just access. But her silence also carries a lesson for you, man to man. Ask yourself, why does her invisibility disturb you? Why does her privacy feel like rejection instead of dignity? Maybe because you've forgotten what it means to live unseen, to build, to grow, to love without witnesses. Her mystery becomes a mirror that shows you what you lost, the ability to exist for yourself. That's Baudrillard's ultimate warning. The moment you live to be seen, you stop living. So when you cross paths with the woman who doesn't post herself, don't rush to decode her like a puzzle. Observe what she represents. In a culture addicted to exposure, she reminds you that invisibility is a luxury, that the highest form of beauty is the one that refuses to perform, and that the deepest intimacy isn't public, it's private, shared between two people who don't need an audience. If you understand this, you'll stop chasing visibility and start cultivating depth. You'll stop mistaking display for connection. You'll stop confusing access with love. And you'll realize real power, the kind that lasts, is born in silence, not spectacle. The loud world will keep shouting. The algorithm will keep demanding proof. But the woman who doesn't post teaches a different language. Presence over performance, reality over representation, intimacy over attention. And here's the final twist. Whether her silence comes from wisdom or strategy, it still forces you to level up. Because you can't approach her with the same lazy habits the internet taught you. You can't consume her like content. You have to show up. You have to be present. You have to earn the kind of access that can't be clicked, saved, or scrolled. And that's why she feels so powerful in the first place. She is the reminder that the real world still exists underneath the screens. So, if this message hit you, if it woke something up about the way you look at women and the way you look at yourself, don't just scroll past it. Like this video, share it with the men who still believe exposure equals strength, and subscribe, because this isn't a place for noise, it's a space for men who want truth beyond the screen. And remember, in the age of illusion, the invisible are the ones who are truly free. So, what are your thoughts on today's topic? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel, Psychological Depth, so you won't miss any of our upcoming posts. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.